pray and I'll start. Father in heaven, please help me tonight. May we be exceedingly simple. Ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. I don't know, many years ago, I was in Guinea, West Africa, came back. The Anopheles mosquito only flies in the hours of darkness. The night before I left, I got a request by one of these Muslim leaders for a massage. I gave it to him after dark. I got bit several times. I came back home to Tennessee, and a week later, because there's an incubation period with malaria, this was falciparum brain malaria, I was walking up my hill to my house, and I felt like somebody hit me in the head with a baseball bat. I just fell right down. And I told Darlene, she came out there, and I said, something is really bad, something's wrong. I was taken to the hospital at Wildwood. They did tests for parasites, and I had malaria. And I remember a day, I had 3 platelet transfusions. I was anointed to be, and I remember Darlene just crying, asking the Lord not to take me yet. That's what I call by the way, there are events in your life that bring everything into focus, right? You can discern what matters from what doesn't matter. I call that a reality check. Getting old is a reality check. Would you agree? Yeah. Malaria is one, but sure. Getting old is a reality check. Now, let me just say 1 or 2 or 3 things. This is just reflections from both sides as a kid and now as an old man, and a few from in between too. And when Jesus saw Nathanael coming, he said in John 1:47, an Israelite indeed in whom there is no guile. There's no guile in those kids. They're not old enough to be crafty and sneaky, right? They're just. Now, Matthew 18, verse 3. Unless you become as little children and be converted, you'll in no wise see the kingdom of God. You got to be like that. Now the balance. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 11. When I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, and I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. There are some things we need to put away. And there are some things we need to retain. I think we all agree, right? I'll give you one example. Here's a child, 2 years old. He doesn't get his way. What does he do? Cries. Beats the floor, whatever. Tempered. And let's say he still doesn't get his way. What does he do? Cry louder. I don't know. Right? Now, a man that's 45 years old, if he doesn't get his way and he starts beating the floor and crying, wouldn't that be pathetic? No, really. Isn't that pathetic? You ought to put that away. Would you agree? There are some things you need to put away. Yeah. And one is a stereotype. I grew up in the South. I sat with a brother. He said, there's a lot of racial prejudice in the South. I said, not as much now as there was back in the 50s and 60s. I grew up in a time and a place where racial prejudice and bigotry was rampant in the Deep South. I remember that one day a man had a flat tire down in front of my house. He was a black man. I went down to help him change the tire, and my mother was furious. That's a stereotype. Black people no good, or white people no good, or yellow people no good. That's a stereotype. Don't we need to break stereotypical thinking? I'd like to suggest one that is killing our church. Anything that Psalms 133, verse 1, how good and how pleasant it is for the brethren to dwell together in unity. It's good to be united, isn't it? The devil hates unity. The Lord loves it. Read Acts 1 and 2, right? He loves unity. So there are certain forces the devil brings into the church to divide. One being educated and ignorant, socioeconomic class, skin color, ethnic background. But the one that really, to me, endangers the church is the old and the young. It's a mistake to form up a worship service for the youth and a worship service for the old and separate the two, because that is not God's plan, and that's one of the things I'd like to look at tonight. Now, that is my wife and me when we first got married. Yeah. That was about 44 years ago, I guess. What I knew about marriage would fit into a thimble. Would you agree? Right? I'll say yes. Yeah. Now, hold on one second. This is 45 years later. Yeah, amen. Let me back up. To gain a proper understanding of the marriage relation is, how long? In fact, you're about to enter a school from which you will never graduate. Is there something a man, 1 Peter 3 verse 7, dwell with your wives according to knowledge? Is there something a man can learn from his wife? By the way, I don't know if you were in church this morning, but I'd like to add something to what I said. There are feminine and masculine characteristics. There are. And I can name a few, but I won't. My wife, who was a feminist when I met her, took her out for a pizza. She wanted to pay for half and open the door. She said, "You and I are absolutely the same." Are women different from men? Are men different from women? Yeah. But Darlene didn't think that. Now you tell me, if we're laying in the bed and the cat burglar kicks out the window, who's she going to expect to get up and fight? Because that's a reality check. 1 Peter 3 verse 7, dwell with your wives according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the what? Weaker vessel. God made a man stronger than his wife. Why? So he could protect the sacred circle. Honey, get behind me. Isn't that why he gave it? Because if you read Ephesians 5:25, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church, and what? Gave himself. You got to be able to give yourself for your wife. He gave us strength to do that. Not to push, pressure, and persecute the wife, not to force the wife, but to protect the wife, to be the barrier between the cat burglar and her. Now, is that true? All right, it's pretty simple. That's a school. And old age is a reality check. Now, I know something about marriage today, come on, that I did not know then. Do you believe me? I don't want to tell you. No. Ay, 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 ay. Back then when I got married, I knew less than nothing. And Darlene was about the same. It took some time to develop an understanding. So at old age, I see things and I can say things. I got a perspective I did not have back then. That makes sense, doesn't it? Okay. By the way, that's the house my wife and I are building. Who lives there? Darlene and I live there. That is not a house. That is a home. Thank you. Yeah, we live there. Out in the country, got a garden across the street, building everything ourselves. By the way, you save a whole lot of money. If you can do it yourself, you save a whole lot of money. I'm walking in this community, beautiful community, nice, beautiful people. I see people coming in all the time, plumbers and electricians and different things. I wonder how much they're getting paid. Friends, I never paid anybody to do anything. You save a whole lot of money. You get the sense of satisfaction, seeing the fruits of your labor. That's the way to go. Do-it-yourselfer. That's just an example of knowledge gained from experience, marriage, and building a house. Now, the guy beside me, his name is Marshall Yanyo. Today, he's a pastor in the Philippines. Back then, I was about 37, he was 15 years younger. Our relationship, early 20s, 37, 38. He was like a son. Today, I'm 68. He's 52, 53. Has the relationship changed? Oh, yeah. Now, let me illustrate. How many have anybody ever have I'll use a son. Anybody have a son? Okay, you had a few. When the son is born, you have a relationship. When he's 1 or 2, you have a relationship. When he's 16, does the relationship change? Now he's 26. Does the relationship change? Well, what happened? Come on, what happened? Don't say he got older, you got older too, right? The relationship is developing. And a man that's 60 years old and has a 40-year-old son, that's completely different, isn't it? Yeah, young people can't have that. Can't have it. 20-year-old can't have it. All my life, since I was a Christian, I haven't had many friends my age. But I've had a lot that were older and a lot that were younger. Many like a father, many like a son. You need both. You got to have somebody to give to you. You got to have somebody to whom you can give. And you need both. If you don't have both, you're lacking. You need both. Now, let me give another example. We built a school. The institution I was at, we had a one-year health evangelism school. Still there. As soon as I get home, I'm teaching the school. We're going to build a school. But all we had were like old women and children. What are we going to do? Mike got the ruler out and he said, let's measure up what we got. And we used everybody we had. Here I am up on the roof, and who's helping me? 6-year-old. Yeah. Now, I don't want to, never mind, I retract that. Yeah, there he is. Yeah. Finish the sentence. That's the old working the young. That's God's plan. And we'll reinforce that. There's a school. It's finished today. That's how it looked back then. But when we finished, stood back, a bunch of children and cripples and old folks and me and another couple guys. Now, how did the Lord do that? That's the Lord's business, right? Now, I'm going to be getting on that plane tomorrow morning. I want to acknowledge something. I'm going to be getting on that plane tomorrow morning. And if I go into that plane and the pilot is 8 years old, will I be concerned? Now, wait. If the pilot is 108, will I be concerned? Yes. Okay. We have consensus on something tonight. Yeah, why? You prejudice against old or young? Not at all. Well, not at all. I'm acknowledging the fact. I'll give another example. Yeah, that's me going into surgery. When I found out who was operating on me, Dr. Yang, right, chief resident of VA Birmingham Hospital, first thing I did, because you can find out about a doctor's background very easy on the internet. A lot of sites, you can check everything about the doctor. I checked it out. First of all, how old is this man? If it had said 23 years old, I'd be quaking and shaking, wouldn't you? Some guy experimenting and learning on me, no thank you. The guy was 57 years old. Yes. Young enough to still, but old enough to still, that's what you're looking for. Somebody with experience. Don't want a 108-year-old pilot. Don't want an 8-year-old pilot. But my dear friends, I'm not flying a plane. And we can use 8-year-olds and 108 years old in the work I'm in. You'll see in a minute. Now, I went to Wildwood Hospital. That's how I looked when I washed up there on the beach. I found out when I got there, in fact, a lady came to visit us and she said everybody looks like a skeleton there. They look like they're dead running around because nobody was overweight and they were all flying around and they were 80, 70, 80, 90. My secretary was 88 years old. And everybody said, what happened here? What kind of place is this? It's like the walking wounded. And me too. Now, look, I was a skeptical person. I asked all kinds of questions. In fact, when I had my first Bible study with the pastor, yeah, that's a long story. My first Bible study, I was ready for him because I never met a pastor before. And I thought he was going to, browbeat me. So I was ready for that guy. I came in there with my T-shirt, Lita Ford, half naked, playing electric guitar. I sat down. He never said a word. All he did was, I'd ask a question. You point at the Bible. I'd ask another question. Boom. I have followed in his footsteps. I don't say a word. Boom. And I thought, why are these Adventists living so long? I'd never heard of a Seventh-day Adventist. Why are they living so long? Earl Quall is a physical therapist. He was bucking 85 years old. And you got this doctor, and you got the Brother Rich was 98 years old. My secretary, 88 years old. The medical director, 70-something years old. I thought they ought to be on, on some kind of stretcher. Instead, they're carrying the stretcher. I thought, what's up? Is that a good question to ask? Why do these people live 10 years longer? That's a fair question to ask. I'd like to give an answer from a different angle. The blue zones, right? I'm not going to read it now. I'm just going to kind of say what it says. You can read it if you want to. There they are. There it is. There was a guy named Dan Buettner. And as he started to research long-lived people groups, he found some here and there and yonder. On the board, he used blue push pins and blue markers to put blue circles where the old folks lived. This is a look at what he found. He said there in Greece and Sardinia and Okinawa and Costa Rica and what's the other one? Loma Linda. And by the way, if you didn't see it, the National Geographic still use this in different places. On the cover, it had, the story was long life. And it listed the Okinawans, the Sardinians, and the Seventh-day Adventist in the National Geographic. Yeah. And they're just talking, and this is a secular thing, right? They're not looking at religion. They're looking at how long do you live? And the Adventists were right there. Now, an anthropologist, he'll go to work, study a people group, and try to discern what's happening there. So they looked at the folks in Okinawa. Oh, I got a picture of it, I think, here. So that was the National Geographic. The Okinawans on the front. The Okinawan program. It explains what they were eating, their lifestyle, different things. By the way, the National Geographic, you can still download in the archives and you can look at it. And this is what they were eating. How many sweet potatoes? Come on, that's a lot of sweet potatoes. They eat almost as many as I do, right? There are a lot of sweet potatoes, a lot of rice, a lot of legumes and vegetables. Now, that's one of the factors that he looked at. What is their diet? He's trying to account why they live so long. Well, that was the Okinawans. And then the Sardinians, what are they eating? And as he looked at their diet, now none of these were like vegans. They all had some animal products in their diet. But as you can see, not many. They were on the Mediterranean diet plan. This is how they looked, and this is what they ate. And this is a pie chart of what they ate. Notice 47%, can you read it from back there? Whole grains. That's pretty good, right? Now, they had a lot of dairy, a quarter of it was dairy, but the vegetables, 12%, legumes, and different things. Yeah, they lived a long time. Now, Ikaria, they lived a long time too. That's what they have for lunch over there, some of them. I don't know what that is, do you? But it looks good. Looks pretty good for me. Is that pizza? I don't know what that is. Ooh, you think so? That's exotic. That's exotic. Are you from that area? Okay, that's great. Okay, good. Can you cook that for me? No. Okay. Is it good? All right. We got. That's experience. That's not me standing up here yapping. That's experience. And this is what they ate: 17%, 20%, 37% greens and vegetables. Fruits, legumes, potatoes, olive oil, 6% fish, 5% meat, and that's what they ate. Then they set their sights on Loma Linda. What did the Adventists eat? A similar diet. And this is where they ran into a problem. Because they knew if you leave Greece or Okinawa and you go to Tokyo or Boston, what happens to your lifespan? Drops like a rocket. And you die like everybody else. They said it's easy. It's geographic. They're born there, they live there, they inherit the characteristics of the people. It's all about geography. Then they got to the Adventists. Where do Adventists live? Everywhere. 21 million living where? Everywhere. It's not geographic. But you know something all four have in common? The other 5, maybe more than the Seventh-day Adventist, a very close, and they said it, not me, they said it, he said it in the report, a very close sense of the old and the young family together. Do you think that might be a factor? You think? There's my, you know about that, right? Because it's your neighborhood here, Calumet. When I got there, by the way, I showed you pictures of those tough guys, right? There I'm going to the office. But I didn't show you this picture or that picture. We had all kind of young people coming. When I was there, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, is that what you call it, CB, whatever you call that thing? Okay. They asked me if they could interview me. I said, sure. What are we going to talk about? And I sat down with Lucy Burke, who is a well-known personality, and she was a native up there. So she's speaking as a native. And I said something to her. She asked, I'll play it for you. She said, I thought she said, how old is your wife? But she didn't. She said, how is your wife? But I thought she said, how old is your wife? And so I told her. And what startled Lucy is there was an American, Canadian, because we had a group there doing evangelism, standing behind me. And she, when I told my wife's age, she said, then afterwards she said, you just told all of Canada how old your wife is. Now that's what stunned her. Listen to the question. Need some volume there, Patrick, if we, okay, let's see. This way.
How is your wife now?
How old is my wife?
How is she now?
How is she? My 60-year-old wife is doing just great, and I'm 58. And she's missing me. I talked to her this morning, and I told her about the weather. Darlene said, I wish I were there with you. I said, no, you don't, because you have never seen cold like this, and I hear it's not even winter yet.
Yeah. And so Lucy, nice lady. That's a nice lady. Really, the interview we did is like 45 minutes long. She's just asking questions. I could talk about God. You know, it was good. It was good. And she said, what's the deal? That lady back here just like something just, you know, says she got robbed or something. Because you said your wife is, what'd I say? This was 10 years ago, 60 years old. I said, well, we don't tell our age in America. I don't know about Canada. And she told me, what? She said, every year that passes, we blow the trumpet. Today I am 78 years old, and they tell the world. I thought they got it right. They don't have a stereotype that old people should be in the retirement home and not part of society, and put them in a different church service on Sunday, Sabbath morning. They got it right. And I told her, I said, you got it right. Now, what I said about the airline pilot and the surgeon, I say about the runner from Kenya. The race is not to the swift. And you say that guy from Kenya can run faster than you. No, he can't, friends. Not in the race I'm running. He can run faster with physical legs. That's not the race. The race is not to the swift. That's not the race. If the race were to the swift, the old folks would be out of luck. You agree, right? Yeah. So what is this kind of race that we're running? Well, we'll get to that in 1 minute. So when I came here, the first thing I showed in this church, I showed that in an effort to break down the idea that when you get old, you're going to be on a whatever, ventilator, I don't know, whatever. And I just showed that. I said, this lady at 76 holds all the world records, all of them, and she continues to break her own. How can she do that at 76? I know what she eats. It's not bad, but it's not like ours. Please, try to banish from your mind that when you think old, you think of somebody hunched over with osteoporosis and kind of pushing on a walker or a rocker. because that is what has been ingrained in our minds so long. As an example, Hollywood. You got a few gray hairs, you got a few wrinkles, you're out of here. Right? There's no place for you in Hollywood or Washington or Wall Street or Madison Avenue or anywhere but the old folks' home. That's where you need to be. And I don't know if you have that like in Canada, but when the parents get old, we put them in the can. Be done with them. And that is the devil's plan. Now, great controversy, page 71. The missionaries went out, how? 2 by 2, as Jesus sent forth his disciples. Well, did they send out old guys or young guys? Come on. Both. And the old one went with the young one. I'll tell you why. Here's the old one. They're in a home. The young one's praying. And this young one's not going to stop praying. He's going all night long. The old one can hit him and say, hey, shut up. You're going too long. Isn't that true? The young has some kind of wild idea. The old one can reel him back in. Right? Is what it says, yeah. Associated a man of age and experience. A young man is a horse without a bridle, and he needs some help. Now, does the young man have something to give to the old guy? Oh, yes. Let's not pick on just the young man is full of an adventurous spirit, enthusiasm, a willingness to strike out, and he's strong. Does the old man need that? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Every time I work, not in a meeting, I'm always working with a young guy, and he's working with an old guy. Now, that is me when I was 7 or 8 years old. Now, based on what I just showed you, what should I have been doing at that age? Learning. If somebody should have stuck me with an old man. I should have been put with an old man to learn something. And instead I was in public school with people my age, learning something. Yeah. God's plan is the young work with the old. Where do you find that in the Bible? My dear friends, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Jesus called those young guys and he trained them by association. On the job, monkey see, that's how he worked. That's his plan. It's never changed. And when he sent them out 2 by 2. He couldn't send out the old with the young because they were all young. So it was okay. See the lady in the pink dress back there? That was my secretary. Bessie, it's the only picture I have of her, Bessie Callahan. When I got to Wildwood, she was just coming back from Africa. And they told me about her work in Africa. She was accounting. And the ladies there I think they were in Kibidula. Ladies there would come to Sister Callahan and say, I got a problem here. And I can't, the ledger doesn't balance. I got a problem. Boom, like lightning. She'd say, this the problem. Oh, Sister Callahan, how do you know? How can you see it so fast? And she said, be more specific. Be more specific. Be more specific. Here, I'll zone in on it. I made that mistake 10,000 times. Yeah, true. I made that mistake 10,000 times. That's how I know. You get somebody old with gray hair, they have made so many mistakes. If they're not a fool, they ought to learn something. Should be spiritually mature. Can you be 80 years old and be spiritually mature and a child? Yeah, you didn't put it away when you were young. But you can be old, and through all the mistakes, by God's grace, you can be wise. Does a young person need that? You ask those girls in Kibidula. They were astonished. Oh, Sister Callahan, there's a problem. The man that I was closest to, his name was W.D. Frazee. I remember one night, he's sharing something. And then now he died at 90 years old. Back then I was 35, 45, 55, 65, 75, 85. It's a lot, right? He's a lot older than me. And what he said and what I said, and I was talking to him, I said, well, I don't know that I agree with you, but what bothers me is that you're 65 years older. And I've been in the church now for 3 months. Right? Don't you see? You've been in the church 3 months, and you think you know more than 15 men that have been in the church all total, 500 years? I didn't know that when I was 25. Didn't know it when I was 45. Didn't know it when I was 55. I'm learning the importance of working with older men, and that lady helped me to see it. Now, I don't know, we may have different ideas, but I'll take your input. You reach a point in your life where you see you're no longer as physically strong as you used to. Isn't that right? As you used to be. All right, they did. Now, what age is that? When you start a downhill slide, what age is that? So one says 40, one says 45. Nobody says 95, right? We know it's not that old. Nobody said 5. We know it's somewhere in the middle. You wake up and you think, well, and we call it a midlife crisis. And you say a Christian ought to be immune to that. My dear friends, Christians ought to be immune to everything, but we're not. And you look at the wrinkles in your face and the gray hair, which you have if you have any left, on your head, and the creak in your back. And instead of running a 900 meters, now you're running a 24.4. And you're thinking, now I want to tell you about my midlife crisis. There comes a point, if you had an idea that you're going to dance in the Bolshoi Ballet, you can can that idea because you're not going to. If you had an idea, you're going to medical school. No, my friends, you know all that's where? In the past. You're not going to do it. You ain't going to medical school. You ain't going to dance in any ballet. Why? You're now on the downhill slide. And what you thought you were going to do, you're not going to do. I'm sorry, my wife didn't have any clothes on. I'm sorry. She was young. I know. It's the only picture I had of us camping. Don't look at it. I always wanted to, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, the Appalachian Trail. It takes 6 months to walk it. It's 2,000 miles long. It starts down the south in Georgia, ends up near Canada and Maine. Yeah, I always wanted to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. In fact, in my office, I've had a stressful day. This is in my Wildwood office. I've had a stressful day. I locked my door. I had a little testimony book. People had walked the trail. And I'd read about how they saw the sparrow and the bluebird. I'd read that book and kind of get some stress relief. I'm going to walk that thing. My dear friends, 2,000 miles. Look at me. Am I going to walk that Appalachian Trail? Not going to do it. Now, that is where you end on the Appalachian Trail. But there's a different trail that ends in a different place. And that's the one on which I want to walk. Now, that is we call that a toolbox. Inside the toolbox, we have tools. God has some young tools. He has some old tools. The work isn't dependent upon the tools. The work is dependent upon the Hebrews 11, verse 10. Abraham looked for a city that hath foundations, whose builder and maker was God. Who's the builder in this place? Can he do something with an old tool just like he did with the new tool? Yeah, because it's not the tool, it's the maker. 2 Corinthians, I'm like a broken record on this. 2 Corinthians 4, verse 7, we have this treasure in what? Earthen vessels. We're the tool, but we're not doing the building. Psalms 127, verse 1, unless the Lord builds the house, they that labor, labor in vain. He's the builder. And you say, well, I'm not as strong as I used to be. My dear friends, that didn't change God's plan because he sees the end from the beginning. It didn't change his plan at all. He knew you'd get older. That's built into the plan. Often, we have to get older to acknowledge that we need help. Yeah. 2 Corinthians 3:5, my sufficiency is of God. Can't do it anymore. Can't do it anymore. Can't bear the burdens. Can't run the race. Lord said you never could. You never could. I ran it for you. I carried you. And you finally realize it. What took you so long? You had to break down physically. Anyway, that's the good news of the gospel. Now, God has given each one a... Now, I don't know. Maybe some of you don't believe this. I know it to be true. Well, let's use the woman, the wife. A man looking for a wife under God's direction. Has God chosen the right one for him? Has God got a special one for each man? I think so. Man, don't you? Come on, if God gave Jeremiah his work and gave you your work, but he didn't give you a wife, then he did a halfway job. God never does a halfway job. He is the finisher, 12:2 of Hebrews, of our faith. Now, God has given each one a special place and a special work, tailor-made. Each one is to fill his appointed place and is to help others in their God-given work. Each one is to be willing to receive help from those who can assist him. They should give help and they should receive it. Pretty simple. An old man will say, but I don't have anything to give. In Tennessee, we'd say, hogwash. You got plenty to give. You'll see why I quote that. Now, this is book 9T. By associating with our ministers and experienced workers in city work, our young men will gain the best kind of training. So here's a guy going out, say through Oakwood, right? Graduates theology degree, goes up to Andrews, comes out of, got his MDiv or whatever, 21 years old. What should they do with that guy? Come on, what should they do with that guy? You put him with an old pastor up in New York somewhere. You take him and give him experience, 3 years, 5 years, I don't know how long, however much he needs. You don't give him a church. You give him an old man. Don't you? That's what the old man has to give. The old man does not need to be able to squat 500 pounds, but he got to be able to squat some advice to the young man about the mistakes he made. If I were a young pastor, I'd stick like glue to Pastor Morris. I'd be demanding. I'd say, look, conference, you're trying to put me into work and pastor work? No way. I'm going to stick with that man there for about 2-3 years, learn something, because I don't know anything. My education in Andrews was all hollow, all superficial, can't learn to love, can't learn compassion, can't learn sympathy, can't learn any of that in the classroom. Nothing. You can get some knowledge about math in Daniel 9. That doesn't cut the mustard in ministry. You got to have a heart that bleeds. And the best way to learn it is by seeing it done by an old man. I didn't make this up. I read it. And I found it to be true. By associating with our ministers and experienced workers in city work, our young men will gain the what? The best kind. Plan A. Plan A. That's how we work. That's how we work. Now, I want you to help me with this. You can download this, the Review and Herald, May 24, 2001. You can download it on the Review archive, their website. There it is. I'm going to read it. You see the cover story there, right? Driven by a Dream. This is a picture of Adventist headquarters in 1853. Church wasn't formed up until the General Conference until June of 1863. But they were certainly working to give the gospel. And so the way the article is written, see that word, driven by a dream, next word? Young, determined, diligent. They shaped the modern Adventist movement. Now, whether rightly so or not, they're quoting out of, I'll use Joel instead of Acts 2. They're quoting out of Joel, right? a latter rain experience when the church got assembled. So the way he writes the article, it's like he's going in to meet those workers in this house, the Adventist. So what I'm going to do, Dateline, Rochester, New York, 1853, 2 o'clock in the morning, young men are working, and it shall come to pass, and he's going to, now he interviews the people, interviews James White, he interviews him. I'll read it, but leave the age out, and then you tell me, you fill in the age as I read. Imagine James White, editor and publisher, introducing the team around him. He says, well, you know me, I am, and my wife Ellen is, we got one person that's telling the age here, come on. And Ellen is 26. Here are our children, Henry, Edson. Standing there with them is Clarissa Bonfoy. She has taken faithful care of Edson. She is. Next to her is Annie Smith. She is. She fills my place when I'm away and is indispensable all the time. Her brother, one-legged Uriah Smith, is a budding author who helps with any kind of work that needs done. Then we have several young folks who are learning the printing business from Mr. Maston. George Amadon is. Oswald Stoll is. Fletcher Byington is. Warren Bachheller is. There's Jenny Frazier, our cook. We sample her product 3 times a day. Next, Luma Maston, our printer is. Here are 2 hardworking folks who came with us from Saratoga Springs, Sarah and Stephen Belden, ages and respectively. Stephen helps me with the business angle of the work, while Sarah, Ellen's sister, takes care of the household. And with this continual round of cleaning, mending, washing, and sewing. Finally, we have 2 new additions. These are Nathaniel and Anna White. My brother and sister, Nathaniel is, and Anna is, and then J.N. Loughborough and his wife. They live in Rochester. When he isn't out preaching, he comes around and gives us a hand in the press room. He is John J. and Andrews, one of our competent writers, also drops by from time to time. But most of the time, he's in the field preaching. Also, he is. In the leadership of the church, only 3 of them were over what? 30 years old. If you averaged in and factored into children, the general conference, so to speak, the Sanhedrin, so to speak, the leadership of the church averaged what? 23 years old. And I tell you, friends, God did it the first time with Nathaniel, Andrew, Peter, James, John. He did it the second time with those. And when he comes the next time, he'll do the same thing. He will find somebody that is teachable, whether he be old or whether he be young. That brings me to the next point. My dear friends, the problem with old folks, well, I'm an old folk. The problem is you've done it so long, you know it so well, nothing's going to change you, even God's word. I.e., Eli. God told him, and you couldn't change him. And you look at our church. John Harvey Kellogg, Wagner and Jones, Ballinger and Ford, a long list. The men got older and they would not listen, went right out into the darkness. Yeah, he's going to find somebody. He bypassed the scribes, the Pharisees, and the lawyers. And who did he pick? James and Andrew and John. Why you pick Nathaniel? 147 of John, an Israelite indeed, and what? Whom there is no guile. That's why I picked him. These are men that were teachable. If you're old, well, I don't know what you define old. I'm not going to. The danger is you are so set in your ways. I've been I hear this. I'm a 7th-generation Adventist. My dear friends, you're a 1st-generation sinner. You ain't no 7th-day Adventist, 7th generation. You cannot transmit spiritual integrity to your children. Right? Even Abraham said that, John 8, verse 39. If you were Abraham's children, you do the works of Abraham. Verse 40, you're trying to kill me. Abraham would never do that. Because like father, like son, chip off the old block. You can transmit a corrupt nature. That's yours. You can give it to your children. But you can't give them righteousness. Kids, and that's my problem. Done it so long, know it all, done it all, been there. And I'm not going to let anybody tell me what to do, not even God. And God says, what? I'll pass you right by. And I'll find some 9-year-old down here that'll listen. And he did that with Samuel, right? Brought him right into the temple. After he was weaned, Samuel would listen. Eli would not. That's heaven's plan. Now, you want to read something beautiful? Here it is. Our young men should, now wait a minute, what's a pioneer? That's it, they go first. I have worked in pioneering things 7, 8, 9 times. That means there's no established structure. That means there's no housing waiting for you. It means that you probably don't have any money, and you probably don't have any know-how, and you probably don't have anything. They go first. Our young men should be pioneers in every enterprise involving toil and sacrifice. While those, can I call them worn out, or should I say overtaxed? Servants of Christ should be cherished as counselors to encourage and bless those who strike in the heaviest blows? The young people. But they're being encouraged by what? The old people. The devil says, if I can separate the old and the young, then the young can't find encouragement, and the old will go to the old folks' home. And that's, I don't have any doubt that's the devil's plan. Now, Caleb is unusual because that man was old. Numbers 14:9, it's, when he's talking, he's not talking about whole grain bread for breakfast. What's he talking about? Eating what? Yeah, 14-foot tall men. Caleb is an old man. Old man. One of the 12 sent out. He said, still the people before Moses said, let us go up at once and possess it. And then he says, those Anak, those big old giants, that's my bread for breakfast. Let me at them. Now, 40 years later, Caleb's an old man. What'd he say? What'd he say? There's old Anak. He's a 14-foot tall Anak. That's my bread for breakfast. Let me at him. Now, you want me to read it? Cole Porter Ministry. It was Caleb's faith in God that gave him courage, that kept him. Let's see how he whooped the Anak. That gave him courage, that kept him from the fear of man, even the mighty giants, the son of Anak. What kept him from the fear of Anak? What gave him courage? It was faith in God. It wasn't his physical strength. It was faith, even the mighty giants, the sons of Anak, and enabled him to stand boldly and unflinchingly in defense of the right. We want Caleb's now. God's looking for somebody in the Berry Church to say, that's my breakfast. That's bread for me. Whatever may be the object of God's desire and His will. So I'm going to show something I showed when I came. If you weren't here at the first meeting, you haven't seen it. If you were, it won't hurt you to see it again. This year my wife turned 70. About time to put her in the nursing home, isn't it? About time to put old Darlene in the nursing home, I think. Yeah, this is my wife. She just turned 70 years old. Where's the maniac?
It's good exercise.
And don't you think those videos were taken 10 years ago, friends? They were taken 10 weeks ago, after my wife's birthday. And remember, if you were in church service this morning, John 9:25, this one thing I know, I once was, but now Darlene said, this one thing I know, I work 12 hours a day, heavy labor. How so, Darlene? Health message. Health message. Now you tell me, if the church had an army like that, would we make short work of this place? I'm going to quote a Baptist preacher. I never quote Baptist preachers, but I'm going to quote one this one time. A.Z. Tozer, T-O-Z-E-R. You can look up on the internet. It's a famous quote. He said, if the apostolic church lost the Holy Ghost, 98% of everything they did would cease. And then he said, but if the Christian church of today lost the Holy Ghost, 98% of everything we do would continue. Because you can see what he's saying. We are void of the Spirit of God. So, I dare not stop without saying one last thing. The secret of success. I'm going to apply this to Sister Morris. She's sitting right there. I got there and I told Sister Morris, I said, I'm here, and I'm the dishwasher. And I said some other choice words. And then I told her to cut back on what she's doing. And one day, I even said this to her in love. I said, you're a stubborn woman. She'll tell you I told her that. You're a stubborn woman. She won't ease up. She won't cut back. That's what Caleb had. We're the maniac. Sister Morris says, where's he at for breakfast? And this is the old King James. What I'm quoting for now is the old King James. It's the only time the Bible uses the word addicted. The only time. Paul explains 1 Corinthians chapter 1, then I quote 1 Corinthians 16:15. Chapter 1, he said, look, I baptized Stephanus and his household. Other than that, I baptized anybody. You know, Peter baptized, Paul's baptized. People are baptizing, but not me, just Stephanus. And then you get to the last chapter, verse 15. This is what he says. And I'll make it a question and answer format. He said, look, remember the first fruits of Achaia, Stephanus and his household? Yeah. They have, all of them, have become addicted. Is that tragic news? The answer starts with a D. Depends. Depends on what? Depends on what? Yeah. To what are you addicted? And then Paul writes, they have addicted themselves to the ministry of the saints. That woman's an addict. I said, slow down, Sister Morris. This is a little bowl of soup is all I need. Addicted to the ministry of the saints. Can't stop her, won't slow down, won't cut back. I gave up. Okay. A stubborn woman won't listen. Now, that's how they were in 1853 in that room where their average age, if you factor in the children, was about 14 years old. If you factor in the teenagers, 24 years old, that's the leaders of the church. There were no other people above them. That was it. Kids. Isn't that wild? Now, questions tonight, don't write it on cards. A verbal question. If you have a question, you just ask. We're going to take up a little offering first. I'm going to pray. take up an offering for the expenses, electricity, things like that. It's for the church. And then if you have a question, you feel free to ask. And then if it gets difficult here, I asked Pastor Morris, can I wear my running shoes tonight in case I got to flee the church? Because you never know, them Adventists, they might come after you. All right, Lord bless us now as we conclude and say farewell. I ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Now I'm going to talk while they do the offering, if that's okay. You go ahead and do the offering. I had a dozen verses like this that I did not say. Deuteronomy 33:25, you finish it for me. As thy days, so shall thy strength be. You put that with Ecclesiastes 3:2, time to be born and a time to what? Die. The Lord said, I got you covered until the moment you draw your last breath, if you follow me. Yeah, I got your life in my hand if you follow me. As thy days, so shall thy strength be. I don't need to worry if I'm under his wing. 17, 77, 107, God has promised to give me strength to do my work. Isn't that wonderful? That's wonderful. It's one of those, it's like a win-win. Now, Elisha finished his work laid up in a sick bed, a long, miserable, lingering death. But you know, that king came and Elijah said, shoot those arrows. He was working even on his deathbed. So until you draw that last breath, God is going to use you in a way you cannot imagine. Now, there probably aren't any questions tonight. If there is, I always try to give a Bible answer. Any questions? Yay? Nay? No. One in the back room.
I take Imovane to help me sleep. And at one point, I went off it for 1 month. And during that time, I must have been sleeping, but I felt like I was awake and aware of everything that was going on.
Yeah.
My desire is to abolish it completely.
Yeah.
Pray for me and please advise me.
Okay. Best pillow in the world is a clean conscience. That's the best pillow on planet Earth. It's a clean conscience. Second best pillow on the earth, strict obedience to the health laws. I give my beloved sleep. Christ gives us sleep. And the way medications induce sleep, if you read how that dynamic works, how they induce sleep. I said one time, how does the president, I don't know what Canada, how it goes here, how does the president of the United States sleep when he's got armed guards outside of his doors? You go to CNN, cursing him up one side and down the other. How does that man sleep at night? Answer? Pills. Pills. If you go to sleep with a pill and you wake up with a pill, the old body pretty soon won't be able to sleep unless it has a what? Pill. That's just neural pathways, yeah. So I'd say let's strive to be able to sleep at night. Exercise program, do all you can. You do all you can and ask the Lord to do that which you cannot do. That's how you're saved, by the way. The roof falls in, righteous by faith. You're doing your best. He'll do the rest. That's righteousness by faith. Any other? Love you, my sister.
What habits do young people have to practice in order to balance a healthy lifestyle and a good relationship with God?
I start with reading Daniel 1, chapter 1, 8, and 9, and read Daniel 2, and then 3, and verse 4. You do what Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego did. And let me just focus in on just one verse. Daniel heard the decree, Darius, if any man makes a petition of any god other than me, he's going where? Lion's den, Daniel 6. As Daniel was going into the lion's den, Darius walked over and he said, Daniel 6:16, thy God, whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee. And down Daniel went. That's what you need to do. That's it. You need to stop listening to Darius and there are 10,000 around you and listen to God. Threw those windows open, got down on his knees. He knew the spies were watching him. And by the way, this morning, I don't think I ever said it. When I said peer pressure, the thing holding people back from the health message is most often what people think about them. Yeah. What will people think if I start eating vegan stuff? If I start healthy, what will my peers think? Yeah. You need to insulate yourself from what your peers think and see what God thinks. My dear, what's your name? Sia? Did I get it right? Sorry. He's given you a distinct, unique personality, just like me. You need to be yourself, not a puppet of the people around you. 6:6 of Ephesians, not with eye service as a man pleaser, but doing the will of Christ from the heart. That is the plan. You take the books, and by the way, let me give you the best theology school on earth. And let me suggest you go to theology school. Here's the best one on earth. You get Patriarchs and Prophets, Prophets and Kings, Desire of Ages, Acts of the Apostles, and Great Controversy. Lay them down beside the Bible. Cost you nothing. Then you open them up and you read them together. That's the only education I've ever had in my life. Do that. Ask God to break the hold of the puppet strings on this world, and then be ready to live or die just like Daniel. That's the best advice. And where did Daniel begin? Daniel chapter 1, verse 8, 9. Daniel purposed in his heart not to defile himself with the king's meat. And then there's an and, or, what else? Anybody know what it says next? Or the king's wine. That's in the Bible. The wine of Babylon will destroy you. Our call come out of Babylon. And when the Lord makes something plain, this is Babylon, you need to come out. And what do I mean by that? I mean anything. Anything. That is not my plan. That is not your place. Come out of there. And what are you going to say? I'm on the way. And then he will take you and use you in ways you can never imagine. Then, I mean, come on, look at me. I'm a hillbilly, a drunkard, a criminal, and sorry, those are the good points. And I have gotten to go all over the world and talk about God. Isn't that great? I think I'm in Canada talking about God. How could God do that for me? I say, praise His name. This is the work I love. This is the work He gave me to do. Your work will probably be different. I don't know what it will be. But now we end with the answer to the question, Ecclesiastes 9, verse 10. My dear young brother, whatever your hand findeth to do. And when you wake up in the morning, what's for breakfast? My breakfast is ANAC. Or whatever God tells me. That's the breakfast of champions. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
On the monitor,
Yeah.
you were talking about something that's, it was referenced to CTR, page 560.
Counsels to teachers.
Pardon?
Counsels to teachers.
Okay.
Counsels to teachers. Yeah. And let me say one other thing to this young man. You got to bring yourself to a decision if you trust in the prophet. You got to. Either you trust it or you don't. You believe it or you don't. Does it have authority like the Bible or does it not? Because if it does not, this church is built on a rotten foundation and it's not going to last. Because one of the identifying marks of the remnant is, there is reactivated a prophetic gift inside the church. I don't have time to give all the Bible verses. And that gift is going to steer us right into the harbor. You need to come to a decision on that. And if it's from God, If it's not, you need to leave the church. You're in the wrong place. I came into the church for one reason. I found the truth. I stay for one reason. Still there. I had a man tell me one time, this is what he told me. He said, man, this church, this was in an Alabama church I was in. He said, this church stinks, man. It's mean. It's no good. I said, what do you mean? He said, there's no fellowship here. The Baptists down the road have got fellowship. I said, I'm not looking for fellowship. I'm looking for truth. Now, if we get some fellowship, that's icing on the cake. I'm not looking for fellowship. I want the truth, don't you? And when I saw the sanctuary and the second coming and the Sabbath, the spirit of prophecy and the health message locked together, and I searched and searched and searched trying to find some fault with it. And I thought, this is the truth. And I asked that pastor who was studying with me, I said, would you take somebody like me? Or would you even think about taking me into the church? I didn't know. I didn't know anything. I said, what do you think? Would you take me in? I had cut my hair yet. I had a big old cross earring, hair over to here. Would you take me in? He said, well, I think so. And I found out that the people inside the church were just in the same poor shape I was in. I thought I was joining up with a convoy of angels. I found out I was dead wrong. Everybody's a mess inside the church. And I also found out this is a washing machine to a hospital. And the way the Lord will clean you up, when the laundry goes into the washing machine, it scrubs against each other, one of the actions to get the clothes clean. You come into the church and Hebrews 10 is the roadmap how you act in the church. And you interact with the people. Patrick and Scott and Courtney, all these people I got to interact with. You got to love them all. You got to be blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the what? Children of God. Matthew 5:9. Yeah, this is it. Now, I've seen people quit the church because he did me wrong, or they ate meat, or this one gossips, or all the reasons in the world for leaving the truth. What about the truth? Jesus calls himself, he nicknamed himself, I am the way, John 14:6, the truth. He is the truth. And I hold on to him. And I pray when I got here. I want to tell you what prayer, and then I'm going to stop. I prayed a prayer, and the Lord has answered it. I said, Lord, don't know where I'm going, what's a buried church, but I'm going, and I pray you'll give me love for the people in that church. And he answered exceeding abundantly above all I could ask or think. He did. He did. Any other questions before we end? One last one? No? All right, friends. Again, my thanks for the good food, the good fellowship, Pastor Morris, his kind wife, his taxi service. Pastor Morris has been bringing me back and forth. And he's got a lot of things to do, a lot of burdens to carry, and he's made time for me. And thank you. So why don't we stand together, and I'll pray in closing. Then we can, you want to sing that song, that's fine, but let's just pray in closing. Okay, as Paul departed, he said, finally, brethren, farewell, fare ye well. Our Father in heaven, I'm thankful for a nice experience you've given me here in Barry. I don't know how long my days will be on earth. But if I were to die tonight, I'd die with good memories of what happened to me in this church, the kindness of your people and the kindness of the leadership here and just everybody. My heart is overflowing. My cup runneth over. I'm drinking from the saucer. So as I depart, I know the Holy Ghost won't bless richly the congregation, give them the desires of their heart, and give them a heart that is in tune with yours. I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.